In our readings for today, we hear about the call of Ezekiel to be a prophet to the rebellious, and the grace of God in the face of Paul's weakness. We also hear about the negative faith environment in Nazareth that even prevented Jesus from doing his work. So there is a principle that God reveals himself to us, and this is where all ministry begins. Ezekiel writes that the heavens were opened and I saw visions of God. And Paul, in our New Testament reading, speaks of himself, rather obliquely, as being caught up to the third heaven, and that he had had exceptional revelations. And as God reveals himself to us, so he speaks to us. Ezekiel says, I heard him speaking to me. And Paul's whole ministry began as Jesus himself met him and spoke to him. And then God sends us. God says to Ezekiel, I am sending you. Jesus, in the gospel reading, sends out his disciples in pairs. And there is a principle there that even though we are weak and the task seems beyond us, nevertheless God empowers us. He says to Paul, my grace is sufficient for you, for power is made perfect in weakness. When we rely on him and his strength rather than our own, then, and only then, we are able to do what he wants us to do, so that, as Paul says, the power of Christ may dwell in me. As Jesus ministers in Nazareth, as elsewhere, teaching and healing, the people are amazed at both his wisdom and his works. What deeds of power are being done by his hands, they say. And Jesus later empowers his disciples with authority over unclean spirits and the power to heal the sick. They cast out many demons and anointed with oil many who were sick and cured them. Sometimes we are sent to people who do not listen. Poor Ezekiel was sent to a nation of rebels who had rebelled against me. And there are none so deaf as those who refuse to hear. Indeed, Paul lists among his hardships insults and persecutions, and Jesus' own hometown took offense at him. Jesus tells his disciples if they are not welcomed and they refuse to hear you, then shake the dust off your feet on the way out the door. Move on. There are plenty who want to hear, who are dying to hear, thirsty for the truth of the gospel of God's love. But Jesus could do no deed of power in Nazareth, except that he laid his hands on a few sick people and cured them, and he was amazed at their unbelief. The Gospels only record 2 instances of Jesus being amazed. Do you know the other one? It was Jesus being amazed at the faith of the centurion who had faith. The disciples' ministry in the other villages was successful, fruitful, as Jesus had been elsewhere. And even Jesus' ministry in Nazareth was frustrated by the negative faith of the people there. The same God, the same ministry, but a different response, and therefore a different result. All ministry is based on faith. And even the negative faith of others can frustrate God's plan. Our job, brothers and sisters, is not to be successful, but to be faithful and obedient, to go where God tells us and to do what he commands us. Amen.